Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the York City Planning Commission to order. May we have a roll call?
Johnson,
Here.
Velez,
Here.
Burgos, excused. Davis,
Present.
Wolf, excused. Gaines, Moore,
It's noted we have a quorum. Minutes from the previous meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Are there any changes, updates? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the previous meeting's minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines, Moore.
Motion carries. The zoning hearing board, has everybody had a chance to review what was emailed to you? Any questions? Any unfinished business? Under new business, land development subdivision, case 7.0. We have 7.11591 Linden Avenue. First, we'll hear from the staff, and then we'll ask the applicant to step forward.
Okay, so 591 Linden Avenue is the Little Green Church. It is now owned by the York Arts Institute, and they will be having their business there, and they need to expand on the parking lot, not only just to meet the parking requirements, but so that they can have, for their business and their employees and the people that access their business.
Is the applicant present?
I've never met him, so he knows to be here. He got notification. So, we can actually go ahead and move on. If he comes, then we can.
Is there a motion to table?
Second.
We motion a second. Any further discussion?
Who seconded that?
May we have a roll call?
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines, Moore.
Motion carries. Our next case is 31-2024-Z-V, 835 East Princess Street.
Applicant is Emmanuel Community Development Corporation, Deborah McMillan, 825 East Princess Street, York, PA. Owner Emmanuel Church of God in Christ, 825 East Princess Street, York, PA 17401. Zoning district is RS2, Single Family Attached Residential Conservation District. The summary, the applicant proposes to use the property as a rooming house. The rooming house will have 6 rooms in total. Some of the bedrooms are smaller than the minimum square feet of 250 square feet required by the zoning ordinance. The applicant is seeking 2 variants to provisions of this use. Variance 1, minimum room size. The zoning ordinance requires that within a rooming house, each room for rent be at least 250 square feet in area. This bedroom is existing and likely the same size as its original construction. The applicant has not altered the property. Staff recommends denial of a variance to allow rental rooms smaller than 250 square feet as defined in section 1304.2 through 7.17.B1 at the structure of 835 East Princess Street in the RS2 zoning district. Variance use, the zoning ordinance does not permit a rooming house in this zoning district. Staff have reviewed rooming house variance in 1304.02.7.17. Staff recommends denial of the variance.
Is the applicant present? Could you step forward and provide your name for the record, please?
It's Deborah McMillan.
And could you give us some more information on what you're planning here?
We are currently planning a homeless female veteran facility to help with the homeless veteran situation that's in New York City.
how long, like, the average person would make use of the facility? Is it like, as long as it need, or you guess it would take 6 months, a year?
We would like at least 2 years, but, it may vary depending on the need of the person. So we're prepared to go with whatever need is shown, as we do the case management, so it would be okay.
Are there any other questions? Anyone from the public that would like to address this case? Hearing none, do we have a motion on the variance for room size?
I make a motion to approve a variance that each room be larger than 250 square feet as defined in section 1304.02-7.17.b1 for the property located at 835 East Princess Street.
Second.
Motion and second, further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Haynes, Moore.
Motion is approved. Do we have a motion on the variance for use?
One quick question before we make this motion. It has become our practice generally to put a condition on homes, single-family homes that are given the exception that they revert back to single-family on transfer. I don't expect it because you're not properly doing it, but it is a thing that we've consistently done, so it triggers in our system. Do you have any problems with that condition?
No, we have no problems with that.
Then I motion to recommend approval of a variance to allow a rooming house as defined in section 1304.02-7.17 for the property located at 835 East Princess Street on the condition that the property revert back to single family on change of ownership.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Haynes. Moore.
Motion is approved. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And I also wanted to wish anyone that's a veteran the best of today. This is a happy Veterans Day, so I wanted to also make sure that we mention that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next case is 32-2024-Z-B-SE, 261 Madison Avenue. Oh, I'm sorry, 601 Madison Avenue.
Statewide Partners LLC, 3405 North 6th Street, Harrisburg, PA 17110. Owner, Garden Foods, Inc., and CSO Madison LLC, 670, 2505 Anthony Village Drive, Suite E390, Henderson. I guess that's MV. Nevada, 89052. RS2 zoning district was a single-family attached residential conservation district. The summary of subject property is located at 601 Madison Avenue in the city single-family attached residential conservation district. The applicant intends to demolish the gymnasium addition and build a complementary 4,950 square feet, 3-story addition that will match the height of the historic school structure. The converted building will contain a maximum of 43 dwelling units, all of which will meet the minimum habitable space footage requirements of the city's ordinance. The units will be 1- and 2-bedroom dwellings. The parking lot will be redesigned for increased efficiency and to provide direct access to Madison Avenue in addition to the access to West Rockdale. Additional green space will be provided around the perimeter of the property. It is anticipated that 53 parking spaces will be provided within the reconfigured parking lot. Variance 1 appeal, the applicant seeks a dimensional variance for a multifamily conversion from a different use found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 to include conversion of a school into 43 units for the property at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the dimensional variance to allow 43 units for the property at 601 Madison Avenue. Variance appeal 2, the applicant seeks a variance to the required number of parking spaces as defined in section 1304.01-03.001.d at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommend denial of a parking variance to allow a reduction in the parking requirements for the property at 601 Madison Avenue. Variance appeal 3, the applicant seeks an alteration variance, no structural alteration of the building exterior shall be made except as may be necessary for purpose of safety. For purposes of the subsection, any addition built that is designed to obstruct the intent of this subsection shall be deemed a structural alteration of the building exterior. Structural alteration shall be located on the side of the building not facing a public street at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of an alteration variance for the property at 601 Madison Avenue. Variance appeal 4, the applicant seeks an alteration of structural alteration shall be located on the side of the building not facing the public at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of an alteration variance for the property at 601 Madison Avenue. Variance appeal 5, the applicant seeks a variance for interior landscaping in any parking lot containing 10 or more parking spaces, except the parking garage. 10% of the total area of the parking lot shall be devoted to interior landscaping. Such interior landscaping shall be used at the end of a parking lot rows and to break up rows of parking spaces at least every 10 parking spaces. Landscape areas situated outside of the parking lot, such as peripheral area and areas surrounding buildings, shall not constitute interior landscape. Interior landscaping must have clear visibility from 2 feet of the ground to 7 feet of the ground. And landscaping plan must be approved by the zoning officer and should incorporate principles of CPTED where appropriate at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a variance for interior landscaping for property at 601 Madison Ave. Variance appeal 6, the applicant seeks a variance for dimensional requirement RS2 family attached residential conservation district. Maximum building height 20 feet at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a variance for dimensional requirements for the property at 601 Madison Ave. Variance appeal 7, the applicant seeks a variance for parking lot access to streets. At no time shall angle or perpendicular parking be permitted along public streets unless it is public parking provided by the City of York and located within the public right-of-way, in which case such parking should be back-end only. All parking lots and bays permitting parking other than parallel shall be physically separated from the street and confined by curbing or other suitable separation device at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a variance for parking lot access to streets from the property at 601 Madison Avenue. Special exception for the use. The applicant seeks a special exception to allow multifamily use as defined in section 1304.10 through 1.002.002 at 601 Madison Ave in the RS2 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the request for a special exception to allow a multifamily dwelling at 601 Madison Ave.
Good evening.
Good evening. Stacy McNeil here representing the applicant. I'm here this evening with Tom Englerth from Site Design Concepts, as well as the applicant's representatives, Ryan McKinley and Josh Jaffe. We just heard an awful lot of information from the zoning officer, and we're going to step through that step by step to fully explain to the Planning Commission the relief that's being sought this evening But this, in summary, this is the relief that we believe is reasonably necessary in order to allow redevelopment of this long blighted property at 601 Madison Avenue, and to allow the property to be redeveloped with a complementary addition into 43 multifamily units. And if I may, just as a procedural note, the board members have in front of you all packets with the information we're going to be referencing. I know we have some neighbors in the audience this evening, and if it's appropriate, I thought what I might do is turn a couple of these chairs around so that I could face the exhibits out to the audience, so that they can have some idea of what we're talking about. Of course, at some point, we might occasionally put them up to point to certain things to the planning commission, but if that makes sense to you, okay, thank you. So at heart, this is a multifamily conversion project, which is a permitted use by special exception in the RS2 zoning district. This property, as mentioned, is zoned RS2, single family attached. And it's the first page you can see is our rendering of the completed project, which we will be talking about a little bit more. The second page is just an aerial exhibit in the packet that shows you generally where this property is located in the RS2 district. As you can see, as described, it's largely an area of single-family attached homes. Some of these have been already converted into multifamily or two-family dwelling units. Some of them remain single-family attached. You can see that there is a house of worship next door. There's some other little neighborhood commercial non-conforming type uses here and there in the neighborhood, but pretty much what you would expect from the RS2 district. This property, of course, is a historic City of York school. I think that we figure it's probably close to 80 years old, thereabouts. Most recently was used as a private charter school, but that's been some time, and it has been largely vacant and unable to be reasonably used in accordance with the ordinance. The next page you just can see is our tax map here. This shows you a little bit better close-up aerial view of the existing property. And you can see that this property is just under an acre of land, currently improved with a fairly large structure and associated parking. Now, the RS2 single-family attached zoning district, as you know, some of the purpose of this district is to preserve, protect, enhance, and perpetuate the value of medium to high-density residential neighborhoods. And to do that, we'll protect and strengthen desirable and unique features, designs, characteristics, and recognize identity and neighborhood character, as well as to promote and provide for neighborhood revitalization. And we believe that this project will do those things. It's going to provide a residential redevelopment of this site to allow for some revitalization of the neighborhood while retaining the historic character of this original school here in the neighborhood. The school itself, the footprint of the original school is approximately 7,375 square feet. And then as you can see from the next page, which is a street view photograph, in addition to the original school, there is a metal gymnasium addition, and that is a slightly smaller addition from the original school building. And we're going to take, Tom, we're going to have walk through with you an existing conditions plan, which you have next here in your packet. And I apologize, this is not stapled together very well for you, so feel free to rip out those staples. Tom, so I'm going to have you, I'm getting rid of my staple.
I've got one.
Yeah, Okay, I'll have you go ahead and maybe walk through just some of the existing conditions of the property with the Planning Commission.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So this, as Attorney McNeil mentioned, this is a .93 acre site. It sits on the corner, the northwest corner of Madison Avenue and Northwest Street, and also adjoined in the rear by West Rockdale Avenue. We talked about this existing school that's on the site. If you look at the existing conditions plan, you can see a dashed line down the middle of the building that designates the original school that I believe was built in 1914, and the newer addition, the aluminum-clad gymnasium that Attorney McNeil was speaking of. The site is currently, only has access to public streets via a driveway access in the alley, West Rockdale Avenue. There are no driveways on the street frontages on this property on either Northwest or Madison Avenue.
And if I could, I think if we look at the aerial exhibit, the current, not aerial, sorry, street view of the existing property, part of the reason why we're seeing that is that we can see, at least as it relates to Madison and West, that the property actually sits elevated as it relates to the street.
That's correct. It's, the parking lot is 3 to 5 feet higher than the street itself. Yep.
Okay.
And then the site as it sits today is 97% impervious, so it's got a lot of cover on it. There's 32 parking spaces. Again, an access drive from the rear alley around to the front, a dead-end parking lot, and around to the back. We are served by public water and sewer, and I think that walks you through the site.
Do you know approximately what the height is of the original school building?
Yes, it's approximately 45 feet.
And that's about like a 2.5-story, what you would expect for an old traditional school building, big high ceilings and
Sure,
that sort of thing?
Sure, yes.
Okay. So then the board has in front of them a site exhibit. That's what is being proposed for the site. This is slightly changed from what was in the original submission, just based on a staff meeting that the applicant had, I think maybe just a week or so ago, just to make a few minor adjustments based on those discussions. And maybe you, as you're walking the commission through the proposal, you can kind of point out to them what those items are.
Certainly, certainly. So again, the main portion, the original portion, the historic portion of this building from 1914 is the white block in the middle of the building. That's going to remain. On this site plan, the gymnasium's been demolished, and we're proposing a new addition on the southwest side. That addition is going to be in a footprint approximately 4,900 square feet, 4,950 to be exact. We've pulled that addition further towards Madison Avenue so as not to infringe upon the setbacks as the original gymnasium was on the Rockvale side. We have relaid out the parking lot and gotten 53 parking spaces. We do have 6 parking spaces, including 3 ADA spaces on the back portion of the building that are part of the variance request of the in and out, pulling in and backing out onto the public street. And we'll talk about that in more detail, but that's a lot. That's how just about every property on both sides of Rockdale utilize that street. We'll call it a street, but it is an alley. We were able to shrink and reduce the parking field out front by coming away from the building, providing some green space along the building and a new sidewalk that now reduces that main access aisle in the impervious area. It reduces that access aisle by almost 12 feet and keeps us well within the limits and the requirements of the Saldo. We are also providing an access onto Madison Avenue on the southwest corner of the property, and you can see that highlighted in gray on the lower left side of the page. And then lastly, we have we are going to expand the dumpster location is in the upper left-hand corner. That's where it is today. We will be expanding that and also providing an enclosure as required, which isn't there today.
So to summarize, the idea would be to replace this kind of metal structure that's the new gymnasium with something that we can see here on this rendering would be complementary to the existing structure, but to build that in a way that it would be a slightly smaller footprint and would conform with the current setbacks under the ordinances.
Yes.
And the property, I'm assuming, is currently non-conforming as to impervious coverage and open space?
That's correct.
Is it pretty much all, almost all 100%?
Yeah, it's 97% today, and I think with our addition of we're going to maintain the small amount of pervious that's around the perimeter of the property, between the parking area and the back of the sidewalk. We're gonna maintain that and enhance that. We're also adding green space between the parking field and the front of the building, and you can see that in the green shading on the plan.
So that will be an improved condition?
We'll reduce the impervious from 97% to 93%.
And through increasing the traffic circulation within the parking lot, you're also able to then increase the number of parking spaces on site?
That's correct. More efficient layout.
Okay. So in order to accomplish this redevelopment, there are a number of items, obviously, of relief that we're going to be requesting from the Zoning Hearing Board next week. The first is, as mentioned, a special exception is required for multifamily conversion in the RS2 zoning district. As part of that, there are a variety of conditions or criteria that we need to present to the board. The first one that we're actually asking for relief from is related to exterior alteration of the property. So in order to do the demolition of the gym and have this addition built in place of it, it actually requires three-dimensional variances. So it requires a variance for structural change to the property, requires a variance because the structural change is visible to the public street, because again, we do have public streets on 3 sides of this property, as well as the height variance to make the height somewhat consistent with that existing school building, which, as you can see from the rendering, the goal is just to have an attractive addition that's complementary to the building instead of kind of that metal structure, add-on structure that is there at this current time. All of the requirements for the special exception have been met. We've met the setbacks. We're reducing the existing impervious nonconformity. At 43 units, all of those units will meet the minimum habitable square footage. So we are proposing 32 one-bedroom units and 11 two-bedroom units. All of the one-bedroom units will meet that 550 minimum square feet, and all of the two bedrooms will meet that 700 square foot minimum threshold. This property has been vacant for at least 2 years, as is required under the ordinance, and you have in your packet a letter from Blanda Nace, the Executive Director of the Redevelopment Authority, supporting this project. Obviously, if the zoning relief is authorized, the project will, of course, have to go through land development. We also have in your packet a traffic assessment from TRG. This traffic assessment compares the most recent use of the property as a charter school with a 50-student capacity, which is our understanding what the student capacity, the maximum student capacity was at that time, to what the anticipated traffic will be as a 43-unit multifamily housing. And as you can see, there is a reduction in AM and PM peak hours under that traffic assessment. Now, those are the specific criteria that we need to meet for the special exception. Otherwise, we believe that this use is generally consistent with this neighborhood and the purpose of the zoning district, which includes use as high-density residential, and also is a great way to maintain this architectural asset while removing the blight in the area and making a positive, favorable reuse of this property. All services are available. We're going to be actually increasing accessibility to the site, improving the parking layout at the site, improving landscaping and green space at the site, and we believe all in all favorably impacting on the neighborhood. As was mentioned, we do need 3 variances to allow the demolition of the gym and the construction of this addition. As you can see, we believe that, first of all, that's going to yield a much better aesthetic for the neighborhood, and we believe that this would be a nice complementary addition to the building that would be appropriate. Again, as mentioned, really the replacement of that building just can't be accomplished without the variance, especially related to the public streets, which basically this is going to be visible from any public street because of the way that the site is laid out, and the height is obviously meant to be complementary. We are requesting variances from density and parking, and these are, again, related variances. So under the ordinance, we're required to have 1.5 parking spaces per unit, so 1.5 spaces per unit. We are proposing 1.2 spaces per unit. Doing that for a couple of reasons and based on some various data. Number one is, frankly, the applicant's experience and their experience with these types of rental units in this type of an urban neighborhood, and what the actual need would be for parking for these types of units. And based on that, they typically see 1.2 or less for these types of units. Of course, again, remembering that the vast majority will be 1-bedrooms with some 2-bedroom units. Additionally, my client typically regulates and manages and monitors the number of cars that their tenants have. And because these are rental units, they are able to do that in a way that you can't do really when you have owner-occupied buildings, for example. So, for example, someone can own one of those single-family attached homes on Madison. They could have 4 or 5 cars. Nobody can say anything about that, right? You're entitled to have however many cars you want. But if you're a tenant, your landlord actually can tell you, no, you can only have 1 car, or you can only have 2 cars, depending on where you are. This is where you're going to park. So because of the rental structure, they will actually have far more ability to regulate parking than you would have in an owner-occupied development. Additionally, their experience with the amount of parking that's needed for this type of use is consistent with the national average. So if you look to the second page of the TRG letter, you'll see partway down that page is an ITE parking demand study and analysis. And this is basically saying, under the ITE parking generation manual, if they were looking at this, it would only require 44 parking spaces, because under the ITE, they look at the number of bedrooms that you have. And given the 32 1-bedrooms and the 11 2-bedroom units, it comes up with a total parking demand of 44 spaces, as you can see. And obviously, at the 53 spaces being provided, TRG felt that that was sufficient. So again, the applicant really felt very strongly, based on their own experience, that 1.2 spaces per unit in this situation would be more than adequate. But they had TRG go and kind of do that analysis just to make sure and to check themselves on it and make sure that it was correct. The other 2 variances that we're looking for are related to parking design. And I think I will probably have Tom explained them a little bit better. I'll just say one is related to interior landscaping, and the second is related to the location and design of some of the parking spaces. But I'll turn that over to Tom to explain.
Sure, sure. So there is a requirement in the ordinance for 10% of the interior parking lot to be landscaped green. In this instance, because it's a pre-existing condition, we are reducing the amount of impervious on the overall site. We wanted to try to take advantage of the number of maximize the number of parking spaces that we could provide on this site and not provide that interior landscaping, keeping in mind that the perimeter street frontages of Madison and Northwest will remain landscaped and improved with landscape. There's also, we cannot count it as interior parking landscaping, but the landscaping in front of the building, the portion that fronts on Madison, will be landscaped as well. We do have areas striped off on the parking area, and the reason that those are not landscaped is first, some of those are pedestrian access from the stairs leading from the streets, and then secondly, to be able to make the emergency vehicle turns to get in and out of this site. They'll run up over. If that was curbed and landscaped, they wouldn't either A, wouldn't be able to make it if there was a tree there, or B, run up through that landscaping. So we have those striped for those purposes. The second variance is I alluded to earlier, and Stacy just mentioned, are the 6 spaces in the back of the site that are directly accessed via West Rockdale Avenue. So people will come down Rockdale and they'll pull in or maybe back in to those 6 spaces. It's not, that's not permitted in your zoning ordinance. However, I believe in the past, we've looked at this as not necessarily pertaining to alleyways. However, this is considered a street, so we're calling it that. Every property on either side of Rockdale Avenue on this block, and other blocks for that matter, but on this block particularly, access directly onto Rockdale Avenue, either from garages or surface lots. So we would not be adding a new issue or problem to this situation. We simply want to be able to do what's necessary and access our property via the alley directly with parking.
Yeah. And actually, if you look in particular at the tax map aerial, I think you can see on there that, of course, the church next door has parking that does really exactly that, accesses directly to Rockdale, as well as all the homes that are fronting on Pennsylvania Avenue and have their rear Rockdale. I see pretty much all of them either have parking spaces or have garages there on Rockdale. So again, this would be consistent with how Rockdale is currently used and with how other properties have their parking laid out as it relates to Rockdale. Is there anything else you'd like to offer or that I missed?
The only thing I would say is, as far as the existing gymnasium and addition, and one of the reasons that
thank you.
is being torn down and replaced is it is more or less in a blighted condition. The roof is not good, and it has leaked down into there, so the floors are no good, and it's starting to affect the structural integrity of not only the roof, but the floor, underneath the flooring. So that portion of the building is in a blighted condition, and another reason why we're looking to demolish that and build new.
Thank you, good point. So we welcome, I know it's a lot of information, but we welcome questions from the Planning Commission, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that you might have.
We may have missed something in the numbers, but the new addition, square footage, how does it compare to the gymnasium?
Do you
Yeah.
It's a little bit less. I
Yeah,
don't-
it's, the new addition is 4,950 square feet. And the original The original gymnasium was 5,222 square feet. So it's a reduction of about 275, 272 square feet.
And in the rear of the new addition, the ADA compliant spaces, is that the required number for the project?
Yeah, yes, so we have to, anything over 50, between 50 and I believe 75, I don't know the upper level, anything over 50 requires 3.
I don't know if this is a question for Nancy or the applicant. As far as the internal parking lot landscaping variance, are they also looking for relief from that plan being approved by the zoning officer, or does giving a variance on the first part invalidate the second?
So you're just asking if you're just giving relief from the interior for zoning purpose, or, say that again, I'm sorry, go ahead, because I wasn't really listening, I was taking notes, and I know you directed the question to me.
You know, I've said Nancy a lot enough. Do they still need to get the landscaping plan approved by the zoning officer for the interior parking?
It probably will be approved by, on the Saldo land development side of it.
Yeah, we will obviously with the Saldo have a landscaping plan for approval, and I think it would be appropriate, and we would definitely be agreeable that the zoning officer would approve really what's, to me, a modification of that requirement, in that we are going to be providing some interior green space. We're just not going to provide it exactly how the ordinance is suggesting it be provided.
In other words, instead of filing green, you're going to do it along the building.
Correct.
I'm not sure if this question is for, or can be addressed here, or it is the responsibility of another agency. But will the infrastructure have to be improved for, like the electricity, given that you'll be upgrading the building, and therefore you'll have to be upgrading the ability for the structure to support electricity, additional water, things like that? Will the existing infrastructure have to be upgraded? And is that
I don't,
So we're not there yet, we haven't gone into that level of detail to know that. I would assume that the electric will need to be upgraded because it'll depend on whether or not they allow us to do individual meters or 1 meter for the whole building. Water, the water will be improved. We'll have to have a new meter pit and figure out how to service this with fire protection. And then sewer, I would imagine that the sewer lateral that exists out there is adequate for our use, but these guys, the developer is going to go through and they're going to televise that line and make that decision. If it has to be upgraded, it has to be upgraded, and we'll have to go through a planning module exemption no matter what with PA American Water to get the capacity squared away. But then as far as the size and the capacity and the condition of the existing lateral, if it has to get bigger, we'll make it bigger. If it's big enough and they televise it and it's got a belly in it or has some sort of issue, they're going to replace that as well. And that'll be part of the land development.
And, sorry. And again, one more question, I'm not sure I get this, can be answered here or with another agency. But the increase in traffic, so I know it's only, give or take 44 parking spaces, let's assume that it's maxed out to 100% capacity. Two things. Do you know if there will be, based on your studies, if the noise level,
So during land development, right now, we have just this simple traffic assessment because the special exception has this criteria that we need to show that the traffic won't be greater than the prior use. So that's what the traffic assessment is showing you, is that our traffic will not be greater than the prior use of the property. There will be a larger, I think, more detailed traffic assessment and discussions that will occur during land development when they can, hear from staff and the Public Safety Committee and the city engineer as to whether there are any particular concerns of traffic related that they want to have the applicant study further. So that's something that would come through those staff discussions during subdivision land development phase.
So, Mr. Moore, being that you're relatively new on the Planning Commission, so what Ms. McNeil is stating is that once we get through and on to land development, it will then come back through Planning Commission and then on to City Council. So they will be readdressing, you'll hear some of them, same things, but it's different, with the land development. So you all will get an opportunity to also recommend approval and denial of those things that they will ask for at this time. But zoning is always first, and then it goes through planning and zoning so that they can get those variances and special exceptions that they need. Yep.
My question has more to do with your land development, but do you anticipate a stormwater control system?
Oh, good question.
We do not. We just, through our meeting with the city, it's less than 1 acre, so we won't have an NPDS permit. And without the NPDS permit and without a increase in impervious, there's no requirement for stormwater management on this site in the city's ordinance.
Do we have any other questions from commissioners? Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I do not.
Anyone from the public who would like to address this, please? Could you step forward and state your name for the record, please?
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Chris Soliday. I own the properties at 124 and 128 West Market Street. No, that's a little far away. I grew up in that neighborhood. I went to school there. And unfortunately, I've watched it deteriorate to what it is today. I would love to see it redeveloped, and I think they have a great plan. Yes, the old building, and I was through the school in 2019 before we closed down with COVID. I was a group that went through. Building needs a lot of work, and the addition is, like they said, it's terrible. My concerns is the amount of units they want to put on that property. You're talking 43 units, okay? When I grew up there, all those houses were single-family homes. They were big, semi-detached homes. I hate to show my age, everybody had one car. Everybody has more than one car. I would just tell you this, I'm not opposed to seeing it redeveloped, but 43 units on that size lot with those parking. By the way, if I lived there, how are you going to do snow removal? There are certain just common sense things that are pretty difficult to deal with. Again, I would love to see this redeveloped. My only question is 43 units. Thank you very much.
My name is Donna Strobel. I live at 628 Madison Avenue, which is directly across from this. And in fact, it looks like the opening that is being proposed onto Madison Avenue would be directly across from my house or very close to it. We have had traffic accidents in the past just based upon what comes in and out of the church, which would be to the left of this property. And if they put an opening onto Madison Avenue, it will reduce the amount of existing parking on Madison Avenue, which is already quite challenging, because the church doesn't have adequate parking when it has functions, whether it be Sunday services, they have AA meetings twice a week, they rent the church out for various functions, and the street gets parked up. And what the previous speaker was saying is true. Snow removal has been a nightmare. I have lived there since 1999. When it snows, there's nowhere to park. People park in the alleys and block them because there's inadequate space to park. So I concur with the previous speaker. 43 units, it just isn't going to work. It's going to create, and they talk about the previous owner or the use. That was an alternative school. They bused those kids in and out. There were very few cars parked there. There was very little traffic under the prior use. So I don't know how that is a justification for basing traffic patterns with what is being proposed. My other concern would be, as I always understood it, there are a lot of hazardous materials in that existing structure. Asbestos, lead. When they go to do whatever they do, what prevents all of those hazardous materials from coming in and around our homes? So those are my concerns.
Unless you wanted,
No, go.
okay.
I'll jump in if you need me.
Okay, so obviously, there are state and federal protocols that have to be filed with remediation of hazardous materials. They're very stringent. There are specialized contractors who do that work. And I know especially with asbestos, it involves completely sealing structure, vacuums to remove into an airtight container. So part of the reason, frankly, why redevelopment of a structure like this is so expensive and so difficult to do, and why it probably hasn't been redeveloped before, is because there is a lot of expense to doing that type of remediation. But my client actually has done these types of remediations. They're comfortable with understanding what the process is, what the cost is going to be to do that, and who they need to hire, who's licensed and has the experience, who can do it appropriately.
It's my understanding too, from previous projects, that say one of the classrooms is being remediated, it's basically in camp something, is it not?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like if you, okay, I'm gonna date myself here. If you ever saw E.T., and at the end of E.T., and they have the house all sealed off with plastic, you know, that's kind of what it looks like when they're in there doing that remediation. They seal off those areas 100% with the plastic and everything, and the guys go in and they have the suits, and it's, you know, it's completely encapsulated, as you said.
Does that help your understanding, ma'am?
It does. However, the old feed mill that is at the end of Madison Avenue, adjacent to the fairgrounds, they have been tearing that down for, I don't know how long. I didn't see any remediation. There was no encapsulation. I would drive past that and there would be dust clouds. So that's why I'm kind of suspect that it would actually go according to what is indicating as being planned.
We're not doing that demo.
Just to address a couple of the other concerns, snow removal is always an issue. keep in mind that we do have places to put snow. We do have some of those striped areas. We also have the landscaped areas around the perimeter. And we also, at the end of the day, lose 1 or 2 parking spaces. But honestly, the snow removal, we can address that through land development and show that there's adequate space there for certain amounts of snow for sure. As far as the driveway location goes, this plan there was a plan approved for Manitou in 2016 for a driveway in this location and a second driveway that would have been I believe it was only a right in off of Northwest Street that was curved and came up at the end of that parking lot. When we met with the staff last week, they were happy that we were getting rid of that proposed curved limited access onto Northwest Street, and happy to have the driveway onto Madison Avenue. The driveway, we have to provide access to this site from one of the major thoroughfares, either Madison or Northwest, just for traffic circulation, and so we don't overwhelm the alley in the rear, but also to provide delivery, larger traffic access to the site for delivery trucks, and more importantly, the emergency vehicles. So I think I know that doesn't necessarily address your driveway issue.
Well, no, because it reduces the number of parking spots on the street.
No,
And
and
when I was talking about snow, I was talking about snow removal on Madison Avenue as it exists now, not where you're going to be putting the snow from your parking lot. But when it snows, if we have a fairly significant snow, the neighbors that live on the street, many of whom have 2 and 3 cars, have no place to park.
Well, the city should plow those streets up to the curb, and much to the chagrin of this landowner and the rest of the landowners along there, each one will be responsible for having to clear the sidewalk at that point. And again, that'll go on to our property. So
They don't plow up to the curb, everyone digs out their own
Plow
cars.
your car in. You don't know where to
So-
go with the snow.
So obviously, sympathetic to the, certainly it's been, I guess, maybe knock on some wood here, it's been a while since we've had a significant snow here around us, but I certainly understand that when it happens, it's a challenge everywhere in the city, right? Whatever is redeveloped on this site isn't going to solve the snow problem on Madison Ave or the on-street parking on Madison Ave. What we can tell you are if you want the property to be redeveloped, number one, we're going to have some sort of access, as was alluded to, onto Madison Ave. If nothing else, we need to have emergency vehicle circulation through the site. So we really need to provide that. And we are confident that there is sufficient parking on site for the proposed number of units, and that parking will have no need to spill over onto adjacent roadways. Also, as was alluded to, I think the one gentleman mentioned that, supportive, would love to see this property redeveloped, just doesn't want to see this number of units. The reality is, in order to redevelop a challenging white elephant site like this is what it takes. This is the type of redevelopment that is needed in order to see something happen with this property. And unfortunately, without these types of relief, the property is going to continue to sit blighted as it has, because it doesn't fit nicely and neatly into your current zoning ordinance, because it's not a raw piece of land. It's a long since developed property with a building that, whether you want to go in and do the interior remediation and structural changes that need to be made to make it functional, or actually tried to demolish it, you're looking at a significant amount of work to take either of those course of action, which is why they call them white elephant properties, because they're not easy to deal with. But I think what you have in front of you is a really a good project to redevelop the site, certainly supported by the city RDA, which we think will be a good asset to this neighborhood.
Thank you.
There was one more thing I would like to mention. I heard some comment made about. I heard some comment made about a concern about stormwater. And I can tell you the way the property is currently graded, and perhaps it will change if it were to be developed, but the water rolls downhill across that parking lot from that property, across the existing landscape ties, and onto the sidewalk and street. And in a heavy rain, there's so much water coming off that property, it floods that side of Madison Avenue. I've watched it for years. So it's just one more thing that might be taken into consideration if this proceeds.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir. Could you step forward and provide your name?
My name is Dan Gladfelder. I live on 622 Pennsylvania Avenue, right behind the same property. And like Chris, I grew up in the neighborhood, went to school there. Other concern with is the number of units, like he said, being put in, but also in addition to the parking you're doing, what about guest parking? You're not allowing for 53 spaces plus 41, if that's what you're coming up with, 1.2. Where's additional people going to park when there's parties, when there's guests, and the noise, which we've already said about. I'm not sure how that's going to impact that, plus the traffic that's going to be. I don't want to see a traffic signal put in there, but again, with the parking already is terrible in that area. I've lived here my entire life. It already sucks the way it is, so I don't know how it's going to get any better. How many, is the picture there, is that going to be is that 3-story? Is that basically what that new structure is? 3-story? Any underground parking being proposed for any of that? Okay. I guess that's the only concerns I have. It's against the parking, the traffic, and the noise. It's going to be increased significantly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Any other questions from commissioners? Do we have a motion on the variance for 43 units?
I recommend approval of a dimensional variance for multifamily conversion from a different use found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 to include conversion of a school into 43 units for the property at 601 Madison Avenue.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines. Moore, I'm sorry.
Motion carries.
Okay, hold on for one moment, please.
Do we have a motion on the parking variance?
I recommend approval of a variance to the required number of parking spaces as defined in section 1304.01-03.001.d to the property at 601 Madison Avenue.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines. Moore. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Motion carries. Motion for the first alteration variance.
I'm going to do some paraphrasing here on these because I'm not reading the book. So I recommend approval of an alteration variance that no structural alteration of the building exterior shall be made except as may be necessary for the purposes of safety, and that they be located on a side of the building not facing a public street, the property located at 601 Madison Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson.
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion for the second alteration?
I recommend approval of a variance for interior parking lot landscaping for the property located at 601 Madison Avenue.
Can I ask a question? Sorry. Is there a plan to regrade the parking lot?
No. Regrade it?
Yeah.
So, right now, the parking lot goes almost, so we're pulling the parking lot away from the building maybe 10 feet. But no, there will be no significant earth moving or changing of grades.
Except for where you want to put the entrance on Madison, from
Yes,
Madison Avenue?
that entrance will be, yes, we will be regrading that.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson.
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Gaines. Moore. Okay, hold on for,
Motion
okay,
carries.
hold on for 1 second, because this is just, okay. Okay, go ahead.
Do we have a motion on the variance for landscaping?
Oh, we did that.
Yeah, that's the next
We
one.
did?
Well, point of clarification, I believe, if I'm correct, that the motion to recommend approval, the alteration encompassed both variance requests. Did I understand that motion correctly? Both variances that were necessary related to the alteration, subsection 1 and subsection 2.
Both of them, yeah, it's just a subsection 1 and subsection 2.
Is that
Yeah, it
correct?
included it for anything outside of necessary for safety and the location of it facing a certain street.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So we combined it, okay.
Yeah. Well, it was all in one, so. We're on dimensional requirements.
Okay, is there a variance for the dimensional variance requirements?
I'll make a motion to approve a variance for dimensional requirements, single-family attached residential conservation district at the maximum building height of 20 feet for a maximum, is it 4 or above 20?
20 is the maximum.
Maximum 4 above,
And they're going, obviously they're going.
correct.
Okay,
They're going 45.
so that wording is correct then, that the maximum building height of 20 feet
Correct.
for property located at 601 Madison Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson.
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye. You said Burgos for some reason, I'm like, what?
No, Davis, I said Davis. Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Do we have a variance for the parking lot access?
I recommend approval of a variance for parking lot access to streets to allow for angular or perpendicular parking along public streets for the property located at 601 Madison Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Is there a motion for the special exception?
I recommend approval of a special exception to allow multifamily use as defined in section 1304.01-1.02.002 for the property located at 601 Madison Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson.
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next case is 33-2024-Z-V-SE, 757 West Princess.
Applicant, owner the same, Reynold Lewis, 757 West Princess Street, York, PA 17401. He's UN2 zoning district, urban residential neighborhood district. Applicant would like to convert a single-family dwelling into a two-unit multifamily dwelling. Variance 1 appeal. The applicant seeks a definitional variance since the proposed use does not meet the ordinance requirement of conversion from industrial, institutional, or commercial. The property is a single-family home. Staff have reviewed the variance and provisions of 1311.10.d. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a definition variance to allow two units for the property at 757 West Princess Street. Variance appeal 2. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance since the proposed density is less than permitted by the zoning ordinance in this district. Staff has reviewed the variance provision in 1311.10.d and finds the property is big enough for the proposed two units. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a dimensional variance to allow two apartments for the property at 757 West Princess Street. Variance appeal 3, the zoning ordinance requires 3 off-street parking spaces for the proposed two units, and the applicant can only provide 2. The applicant is seeking a variance to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces. Staff have reviewed the variance provision in 1311.10.d and finds that the property does not have unique physical circumstances or conditions that warrant relief from the requirement of 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a variance to the minimum number of parking spaces required for a multifamily dwelling for the property at 757 West Princess Street. Special exception 1 for the use. The zoning ordinance permits multifamily conversion from a different use by special exception in the zoning district in 1304.1.1.02.002. Staff has reviewed the special exception provision for the property. Therefore, staff recommend denial of the request for a special exception to allow multifamily dwelling at 757 West Princess Street.
Good evening. Could you provide your name for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Reynold Lewis, and I live at 757 West Princess Street.
Basically the same. Could you give us some more information on what you're doing here?
Actually, I'm trying to convert my property in like 2 units because there are separate entrances. So I think the house is big enough. So instead of living in the entire house just by myself, so I can, rent some part of the house out.
The basic outline you provided us for first, second, and third floor looks like 3 different apartments. How many are there?
Yes, I was thinking about to make it three units because there are 3 separate entrances, but I don't know if going to be approved for 3. But I like to.
Sir, you're applying for 2 units, though, converting to 2 units?
Yes.
Okay, so that's That's what he's applying for, is just 2 units. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
This looks like dirt.
Yeah, it's like 3, but, I wanted to have it like 3, but the zoning officer said it can be 2 or.
And to clarify, wait, it is already 3 units, correct? I see 3 kitchens pictured.
Yes.
And did you purchase it like that?
No. There were two kitchen.
Is there an exterior fire escape in the rear of the building for the upper floors?
An exterior?
Fire escape? Access?
No, there is no exterior fire escape, but there are stairway all the way down from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor. And there is, in the front, there are 2 sets of steps, one to the 2nd and one to the 3rd floor. They all are interior, not exterior.
The one in the rear, is that on the outside of the building?
It's inside too.
Pardon me?
Inside,
Inside?
yes.
So if it were converted to a 2-unit multifamily, which 2 units would you be using?
The 1st floor and the 2nd and the 3rd could be the 2nd unit.
Do people already live in these units?
Was that?
Do people already live in these units?
No.
Would you leave the 3rd floor unoccupied, or would you combine it with the 2nd floor as?
I will combine it with the 2nd floor.
And you have 2 kitchens? Or would you get rid of one of those kitchens? Because if you're combining the 2nd and the 3rd floor, 2 kitchens. Do
Right.
you want to get rid of one of them, or?
Not necessarily. It can be there in case, there's a party, somebody want to use extra,
If I may, Board, this case came to us because when he tried to get a tenant occupied inspection, that's when they found the other units, and that's what triggered them to send him to me. And then when I started working with him, they had already told me that he converted it into 3. But once we start doing the calculations of how many units can be in there, it was only up to 2. So that's why he just wanted to go for 2. But the property was already broken up, as you can see from the pictures, you know what I mean? So now he's just trying to get it to where he can have it legally and convert it the way he needs to.
So you say if you convert this to 2 units, first floor being one, second and third floor being the second, you would keep both kitchens?
I would keep them if there's another option available. So I don't know why shouldn't I keep them.
We were just discussing here. So that would not be on the zoning side of things, whether or not he keeps that kitchen on the 3rd floor. When they go to inspect the apartment as a 2nd and 3rd floor apartment, it would be up to codes as to whether or not they would allow him to keep that 3rd floor kitchen.
Wouldn't see why not.
I've only seen, I guess, in my time as zoning officer, I've seen it once where someone turned a 2-unit back into a single-family home, and they kept the kitchen upstairs for their, like, teenagers, you know what I mean? Which I don't want my teenagers cooking on the 2nd floor anyway, but they kept it. So, I mean, I don't know if the opposite would, that would be codes and not zoning related.
That's what inspection would have to follow up on for sure. Plus, they get 2 bathrooms.
That I can see.
Okey dokey.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion for the variance to allow 2 units?
Make the motion first. Should make you make the motion.
What do you say?
I recommend approval of a variance to the definition of multifamily conversion from a different use as defined in section 1304.01-1.02.002A for the property located at 757 West Princess Avenue.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion for dimensional variance?
Recommend approval of a dimensional variance for multifamily conversion from a different use found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 to include conversion of a single-family home into 2 units for the property at 757 West Princess Street.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
I remember these. Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion for the parking variance?
Recommend approval of a variance to the required off-street parking spaces found in section 1304.01-1.02.002 for the property at 757 West Princess Street.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines. Moore.
Motion carries. Is there a motion for the special exception?
I recommend approval of a special exception to allow multifamily use as defined in section 1304.01-1.02.002 for the property located at 757 West Princess Street.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Velez.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines? Moore?
Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Next case is 34-2024-Z-V, 203 to 205 East Philadelphia Street.
Applicant Esperanza. Hope for the Future Counseling Services, 203 to 205 East Philadelphia Street, York, PA. The owner, Radamez Melendez, 1309 Meadow Creek Lane. Zoning district is UN1, Urban Mixed Residential Commercial District. Summary applicant seeks to convert the first story of the existing building from a barbershop to a mental health counseling office. Variance appeal 1, the applicant seeks a variance for an outpatient substance abuse center in 1304.01.3.07.002 medical facility for the property at 203 to 205 East Philadelphia Street in the UN1 zoning district. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a variance to allow outpatient substance abuse center for the property at 203 to 205 East Philadelphia Street.
Good evening. Good evening, Board. My name's John Wilson. I'm an attorney with CGA Law Firm here in town, and here on behalf of the applicant Esperanza, a Hope for the Future of Counseling Services Incorporated. Property owner here is different from the applicant, as indicated by Zoning Officer McMillian. We're here seeking not just one variance. On the agenda, I saw that there was a use variance, as indicated by Zoning Officer McMillian, for the medical facility use, which is not permitted by right in this zoning district. But the applicant is also seeking a variance from the parking requirement that requires at least one space for every 250 feet of gross floor area. So with that in mind, I just want to signal to the commission, it's not lost on me where we're at in the evening and where I'm on the agenda, so I'm not looking to extend your evening any longer than it need be. My goal really is just to go quickly through the application packet. I certainly don't want to shortchange you to the extent that you have any questions or concerns, but our goal really is to get a recommendation, but also field any questions, address any concerns that you may have before we go before the zoning hearing board. So without any further ado, just as an initial matter, the use being sought is specifically to allow mental health counseling use in this zoning district, the UN1, at the property 203-205 East Philadelphia Street. Recently, the City of York had its 2044 comprehensive plan that was adopted. It specifically calls out as a focus area access to mental health services as being a primary area of focus, and specifically the plan lists a care provider shortage and negative perceptions of having a provider within a neighborhood as existing obstacles in this context. And we firmly believe that the zoning relief that is sought here is not only compliant with, but would actively support and promote that policy interest set forth in your comprehensive plan. Esperanza is not new to the game. They have a substantial footprint in Lancaster County, but they do see needs here in York, which is why they intend to expand this direction. But it's always good to know that this isn't a first-time virgin voyage. They're a frequent flyer, and they've done this, and they've done it successfully. They seek to build resilience through effective evidence-based practices. The services that they provide are medication management, evaluations, individual and family outpatient therapy, counseling, and crisis intervention. The specific property, as indicated, is located in the UN1 residential commercial district. The property is currently surrounded by a mix of residential and commercial uses. The property is approximately 0.03 acres in size, or 1,300 square feet. Its property boundary lines are directly atop of the existing walls of the property, so there's not any yard space or give when it comes to the parking requirement. The property is rectangular in shape. It can be accessed from both Lincoln Highway and North Queen Street. It's improved with a 3-story building. What's being proposed here is to leave the second and third floors as they are, tenant occupied. The only suggested change would be to the first floor, which was previously a barber shop, a pre-existing nonconformity, commercial use. Really what we're seeking to do is to change that pre-existing nonconformity, still commercial use, but make it into a mental health counseling office space. It would have 3 offices. There would also be a reception area. There are floor plans that are included in the application packet. There would also be ADA compliant bathrooms made available, but the changes are only to the first floor. After consulting with your zoning department, it was indicated that this proposed use constitutes a medical facility, which is not permitted by right in this zoning district. Therefore, a use variance would be necessary. We believe that we are able to satisfy each of the variance criteria here in this case. Namely, the unique circumstances of this property would be the pre-existing non-conforming commercial use there that makes it set apart and different from other properties in the district, as well as its proximity to the commercial business district where this proposed use would in fact be permitted by right. It's not in that zoning district, it's close to it, which makes it different than your average property located in this zoning district. We believe that this proposed use would not have any adverse impacts on surrounding properties. In fact, the foot traffic, vehicular traffic, parking needs that will be generated are less than what they would be with a barber shop where you have more transient use and more traffic going in and out. As indicated, the reason why the parking variance is necessary in this case is based on the improvement located on the property, which doesn't leave any wiggle room with respect to the parking requirement. It's not as if they can raise a portion of their building and make available parking spaces. We believe that the metered parking that's available in the city would be sufficient. Like I said, only 3 office spaces, not necessarily all being used at the same time. So, we wouldn't think more than 2 or 3 trips being generated in an hour for this proposed use. Obviously, willing to subject to reasonable business hour limitations. I don't want to belabor the point, so I'll just ask you if there's any questions about the proposed use, the relief being sought. I'd welcome the questions at this time.
So I have added that, it will be in the minutes. I added that variance, if you would like me to read that when you get to the point where you want to, where you gotta, I'm sorry?
There's one right above it, it's fine.
You good? Well, it'll be different, it'll be for the different use though. So it is a different section that would be stated.
Okay, say that now.
But we can go with for the use first, and then we can do the parking.
Are there any questions? So do we have a motion for the variance on use?
Make a motion to recommend approval of the variance for outpatient, it's not outpatient substance abuse, it should say medical.
Yeah.
I make a motion to recommend approval of a variance for a medical facility in section 1304.01.3.07.002 for a medical facility for the property at 203-205 East Philadelphia Street in the UN1 zoning district.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson?
Aye.
Velez?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
James? Moore? What, I'm sorry?
Nay.
Did you say nay? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion for the parking variance?
Okay, 1 moment, please. All right, so we can, just read, I mean, whoever is going to make the motion, it can read to recommend approval or denial of a variance for the off-street parking requirement of one off-street parking space per 250 square feet of gross floor area as in 1304.01.3.07.002D for the property at 203 to 205 East Philadelphia Street in the UN1 zoning district.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Okay, one moment. It's gotten really Carrie. One moment. Johnson,
Aye.
Velez,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Gaines, Moore.
Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Point of order on that, maybe point of order? Correct me if I'm wrong, Lincoln Highway is Market Street.
Yeah.
462. Yeah. Is that considered Lincoln Highway when it comes to?
462 is Lincoln Highway, yeah.
So Philadelphia Street going west.
No, but isn't 462? It used to be two direction.
Philadelphia Street going west
Yes.
is 462. Until.
But 462 is a new number. Lincoln Highway was a very specific thing that was created, is what I'm saying. I'm sure our mayor will speak up on it at some point. He will know all
It
of
doesn't
that.
matter.
So I'm clear. The Philadelphia Street, that's a one-way
Correct,
right now.
yeah.
And that runs through George Street. Okay, okay.
Yeah, when Lincoln Highway was created, it was a single road made for automobiles to link coast to coast.
Which is Market Street.
Which would have been Market Street, which becomes 462, which becomes everything along the way. Yeah.
It's no big deal.
No big deal, just saying that as opposed to Philly Street.
Actually, more surprised.
Didn't know
I live on Philly Street, so I live.
I was
right-
taking such a bat to a beehive with that, but good to
No,
know.
I live on the 100 block.
Gave me
so-
the inside baseball on it. Good to know.
I do have a
I was
question.
like, Lincoln Highway, that's nice.
I do have a question, because he made a comment. Where does the comprehensive plan stand right now?
So right now, on the
very good.
19th, it will go in front of York County Planning Commission. I also have a meeting tomorrow morning with the LGAC, and they'll probably have some comments, and that is on the agenda for there, but that will be inclusive then of the York County Planning Commission. Once it goes through there, and it's with any, anything that needs to be added, Jessica will add that to it, but then we will schedule hearings for the city council, public hearings.
It's a good thing to note in that too, then, the city hasn't released it. This
In draft format.
is draft, yeah. And I think it's generally just called the comprehensive plan, so,
Correct.
yeah. It might have a dumb title that they pick every time.
2044 comprehensive.
Thank you, sir.
I presume our land development didn't come back. Do we need to,
It's tabled.
it's tabled, right?
I emailed him, or actually, I called the only number that I had for him. He was, know that he had to come here tonight for that before he could go to city council,
Ma'am, if I may, I did represent York Art Association for this property in their zoning hearing proceeding. I've not been involved in land development whatsoever, had no communication regarding that. I assume their engineer would be the one who would have presented that, but if you need me to take back a directive saying, hey, you weren't there.
I emailed him as well.
Is that Roth pre-app?
So
No, I emailed, hold on,
I actually did reach out to Roth.
Did you,
Barry
To
Johnston.
let him know that the engineer wasn't here.
could you say that name again?
Barry Johnston.
I was like, where's your boy at?
Not familiar.
He is,
So excited about this project.
he is Johnston and Associates on Taxville Road. Eric. Yes. Now, and the only number that, now I see now on these emails, there is another number. I will give him a call. But I'm assuming his office is closed anyway. But when he presented, when he did the open vote for the land development, he just gave,